Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 Saitsa Mayoral Debate. My name is Aaron Ramos, and I have the honor and privilege to be your MC for this evening. To start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi and the people of the Southern Alberta Region 7. This includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Sutana, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, including Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Wesley First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation, Alberta Region 3. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep your phones on silent. Be mindful that this event is being live streamed. In case of emergency, exits are located to your right. So please, if there is an emergency, exit in a calm and orderly fashion. We kindly ask that the audience hold their applause and reactions until the designated times after the opening and closing statements. This is to ensure fairness to all the candidates. A special thank you to the State Students Association's Board of Directors, staff, and volunteers for their tireless work to ensure that this event is a success. It is now my pleasure to invite Saitsa's President, Abe Armagan, to deliver the opening remarks. Abe?
Thank you, Aaron, for the warm introduction. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's mayoral debate hosted by Saitsa. On behalf of the Saitsa Board of Directors, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the mayoral candidates, the students from across Calgary's institutions, and members of the public joining us here tonight. We are especially grateful for the candidates for taking the time to share their vision for the future of the city with us. The debate represents an important opportunity for students and the wider community to engage directly with those who are seeking to lead the city. As many of you here today know, post-secondary students face unique challenges around affordable housing, public transportation, food security, and a plethora of other issues. Tonight's discussion was created with the intention to provide a platform that ensures that those voices and issues are heard by those who may be capable of acting on them. Your voice matters, and I encourage you to lean into this opportunity to listen, to learn, and especially to participate. Tonight, we look forward to a thoughtful and meaningful discussion that hopefully can bring about greater change. With that, I will hand things back to Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. To guide tonight's discussion, I'm pleased to introduce Rob Brown. Rob is a respected and decorated journalist with extensive experience in Calgary's local news and municipal politics. Rob will lead tonight's debate to ensure fairness, clarity, and make sure there's a meaningful exchange of great ideas. Rob, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Thanks again to everyone who came out tonight. Thanks to our candidates, the 6 people on stage here. So I was just talking to a bunch of them. And some were involved in the last campaign for mayor in 2021, where I think there were maybe 3 or 4 max debates. It was COVID. They've done 3 this week, or this will be the 3rd this week? That's today. I mean, that says something. This is a real grind that they're going through here, and they take a lot of slings and arrows. It can get ugly. It's pretty thankless. They've been doing it not just, since the start of the month, but into the spring? Really, it's a constant campaign. So credit to these 6 for coming out, and thank you for deciding to exchange ideas. Pleasantries out of the way. I also wanted to thank the State Students Association. So big credit to the student body overall here at SAIT. This is an initiative that was driven by the students, and it's intended to create and build stronger connections between Calgary's post-secondary community and our local government. So I want to get through a little housekeeping, and then we'll get after it. So format and rules. Each candidate is going to deliver both an opening and closing statement. They're going to get 2 minutes on the clock that you see here for their openers, 1 minute for the closer. Opening remarks will go first, obviously. After that, we're going to move into Q&A, and that's going to be broken up into 2 sections. The first will involve set topics. So these are issues chosen by the Students Association. The candidates are going to have 90 seconds to respond to each issue. They'll all be watching that clock to stay on time, and I'll be watching them. Hopefully we won't have to nudge them. They're really good. They're practiced by this point, so they should be hitting their time. We want to get as much time for the Q&A in the second portion of this debate, which is going to come from you, along with some questions that were submitted in advance of today. So if we stay on time, folks, we're going to be able to squeeze in more questions. That's always a good thing. So those, just to be clear, questions have been vetted by the Staff Association, or the Student Staff Association. I'm going to be reading them out, and because this segment will be driven not just by topic, but by who you want to hear from, some candidates may face more questions than other candidates. We're going to do our best to balance things out. This is a competitive election, if you haven't already noticed. So in cases where one candidate takes aim at another with a particularly pointed comment or two, I may provide the opportunity for a brief rebuttal, and they just learned this on stage. Isn't that fun? It changes the chemistry, right? It may happen, it may not happen, but it will be at my discretion. And they'll have 30 seconds to make that rebuttal. And I want to move on as quickly as possible to the next idea, the next theme. But the idea behind this is that they don't get hung up on something that may have been said about them, and then they're asked to address something else, because it's human nature that all of us would be like, oh man, I got to get after that, right? So we want to get that out of the way. Otherwise, no unprompted rebuttals will be allowed here, or interruptions at all. So audience members, you've already been asked to turn off your phones or silent your phones. We ask that you remain respectful and reserve applause for the reactions after the opening statement and closing statement. So here's how things are going to work. We're going to go in order of alphabetical. So we have a set list for the opener. We're going to reverse that for the close, and we'll play with things in between. Speaking order here is going to start with Jeff Davison for the kickoff to our opening statements, and you have 2 minutes, Mr. Davis.
We're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Saitsa, for putting this on. I, in fact, started my my academic career at SAIT as a former broadcasting student, which led me into a great career in film. And one of the things I was able to champion when I was a city councillor was bringing the film industry back here and getting Last of Us to the city. It was an incredible experience. You know, tonight we're going to talk a lot about different things. We're going to talk about affordability. We're going to talk about infrastructure. We're going to talk a lot about public safety and why all of those things should matter to you. But the thing I'm going to ask you to consider in this election is, who do you trust? Who do we hope that can lead our city that we believe? Are they people that tell one story and then do another? Are they people that have had 4 years to get things done, but yet our city doesn't feel more safe or more affordable? I'd ask you to look at career and experience. And for me, this election is all about leadership, experience, and vision. See, my vision for Calgary is just to create something simple, a safe, affordable place of opportunity for everyone. That's why we all came to Calgary. That's why we seek a career here. That's why we want to grow a family here. That's why, hopefully, one day we keep you here and you get to retire here. I think far too often our students are leaving to find opportunity in other jurisdictions. And they're not leaving to go to those places because property taxes are the lowest they can be. They're going there because other places seem more vibrant. The opportunities seem different. And every single student that leaves our city, that's one less piece of brain power we have for the future. So for me, it's all about giving students a voice at the table and inviting them in to have a conversation with us about the city you want to develop and you want to see built. Because that's what we're really here to do, listen to you. So this campaign for me is all about putting you back in the driver's seat, making sure that we understand the priorities you have as Calgarians, and let's all create a safe, affordable city of opportunity for everyone. My name's Jeff Davison, and I'm hoping to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Let's reset that clock. Good to go. Sarah Elder's up next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to Saitsa for having us and for you for spending your afternoon and evening with us. That really means a lot. And I think it's really important for our democracy, especially with everything that's happening in the world right now, that we're here in this place having these conversations. So I'm a small business owner. I'm a mother. I'm a former nonprofit leader. Fun fact, I'm also an English as a learning language teacher. And I really care about this community. And I've gotten into the race to really put forward some unique ideas and perspectives that are actually highly informed by my life in different ways, but not just my life, actually. by the life actually of my husband, who some of you can maybe relate to, because he came to Canada actually as an immigrant, not speaking a single word of English, to Vancouver. He was a master's student in Iran and understood that his ticket to a better life included learning English and moving to Canada. And that wouldn't only provide him with a better life, but also his parents, his siblings, and also, little did he know it, me, when we got married, and now our children. And so my platform is highly informed by my own lived experiences as a former political staffer, as a small business owner, as a mother, as a community member, someone who actually lives only 5 minutes away from here. So if you're interested in looking at a campaign that is maybe a little bit different, but understands and presents things in a way that will actually dramatically, in small ways and in large, change Calgary for the better, then I'm the candidate that you should be looking at. So I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have today. And even after the event, if you're interested in talking to me more about my experiences or my platform, I'd be happy to do that.
Right to the second. We're off to a great start. Jeremy Farkas, you're up next.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the incredible opportunity. Thank you for the amazing candidates. Thank you to Saitsa and everyone who put so much effort into allowing this amazing conversation about our city to happen. We're going to talk a lot about similar issues. We're going to be talking about safety. We're going to be talking about food insecurity. We're going to be talking about housing insecurity. We're going to be talking about how we continue to grow as a city. But I want to use this opportunity to kind of drill down into my why. So my favorite thing about the city is that you are Calgarian the moment that you arrive. You can't say that about every place, but you can say that about here, and you can say that about us. That's what my father knew as a refugee, as a newcomer. He came from across the world to be able to come here to live a great Canadian life right in East Calgary where I grew up. I've had a lot of great opportunities to really get to see and help shape the city in different roles. I started in my public life as a Dover Community Association volunteer at the age of 6. Went on to become one of Calgary's youngest city councillors, the first openly LGBTQ councillor, was able to advocate for things like the low-income transit pass, for housing affordability, for restoring the summer student hiring program at the University of Calgary. I ran for mayor in 2021, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me that I lost. I really got to learn who my friends were. I got to really grow as a leader, got to be able to contribute in other ways to community as a nonprofit leader, as a wilderness first responder, and eventually as a CEO. And it's really that experience that I want to be able to bring, and focusing on the question of growth. So over the next 4 years, one of this candidate on the stage is going to be here to welcome the 2 millionth Calgarian. But much more than a number, they're going to be a new story, just like my family, just like the many of the families and the individuals in this room today here. Our focus is going to have to be continue to be a welcoming city, continue to be safe, continue to be affordable. And again, your question here for all of you is 2 things. Who do you think has the best shot of winning, and who do you trust in order to follow through on their promises? And I'll be earning your support.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jyoti Gonde.
Thank you so much to Saitsa for having us here today. You are such well-informed individuals, and for you to put on a forum like this for all of us is an incredible opportunity to participate in democracy. And I want to say that Calgary is a city that has always been built on opportunity, and opportunity for everyone. And no one knows that better than students. Many of you have chosen to come here for your education, and many of you are choosing to stay here to carry on with your life afterwards. And I want to make sure that the promise that we made to you, that we would provide you with a safe city, one where you had economic opportunity and one where you have affordability of housing, is a promise that we keep. And that's why over the last 4 years, I have led a council where we have made strong investments into public transit. We have managed to receive record funding to the tune of $256 million from the federal government to provide housing solutions for all of you. We have actually been able to convert a former office tower downtown into a post-secondary institution. And that's because we believe that opportunity exists everywhere in this city. And so as you consider what you are going to do with your future when you are done your training here at this fine institution, I want you to look at Calgary and see opportunity. I want you to think, this is a place where I see myself. This is a place where I feel welcomed, and I belong. And I will do everything that I can as mayor to make sure we continue to deliver solid service for you, to make sure you can get to and from school and work in a way that's accessible for all of you, that you can afford to live in this city, and that you can feel this is a city that embraces you and offers you prosperity. So on October 28th, I'm looking for your support as mayor. Thank you so much.
Okay, Sonia Sharp, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, spending some time with us. Thank you, Saitsa. I am actually a SAIT grad, and my journey here is very different because it was not expected. But I will just say one thing. We're all up here about talking about a safe and affordable city for all. And one thing that I am gaining back is your trust. So my opening tonight is going to be a little bit different than I've shared in the past. I talk about a to-do list. We're going to talk about that. But my journey getting to SAIT, and actually the reason I am where I am today, is because of the school. When I was a young child, my dad was a contractor, so I grew up in the trades. I grew up on a construction site. I knew how to hit a nail by I was 5 years old. And I knew what it was like to work to live. That's what my family did. So growing up in the family business, I always told myself I wasn't going to do that. So at 18, I left for University of Lethbridge. I was getting into education. I was going to be a teacher. Turn of events happened. My mom ended up with cancer, and my dad asked me to come back to run the family business because I knew the construction business really well. So I did. I was 20 years old, running a business, 26 male crew. I was 20, and I had no street credit, but I had practical experience. So what did I do? I came to SAIT and took building development technology, which is actual AT now. And I spent 2 years making sure I had street credit, running a program, going to the school, running a business, actually being a lifeguard, and working at a Spree, if anyone remembers that. And I was fed by the cantina at the Senator Byrd's building that existed then, and where Heritage Hall was still closed because of under renovations, and Local Lose was Local Lose, not Local Lose 2.0. So I get it. I get what it's like to be a student, to run a business, to make ends meet, and I was your age. So what I'm hoping again from you tonight is for you to get to know who I am. I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant, and I'm here to serve you. And I've been in your shoes, and I know it's hard. So I'm hoping that you'll vote for me on October 20th. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Brian Thiessen.
Hi, I'm Brian Thiessen, and I'm running for mayor. I'm also the leader of the Calgary Party, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. I was actually born in Lethbridge, junior high in Edmonton, and finished high school in small town Saskatchewan, which I believe makes for a well-rounded individual. I went off to business school at Queen's, and I had spent my summers working in Water Valley, and I fell in love with Calgary. Coming into Calgary every summer, I just thought this was the greatest city, a land of opportunity. Entrepreneurialism was celebrated, meritocracy, and I knew it's where I wanted to live. So I applied for University of Calgary Law School and came here 30 years ago. I learned this city. I couldn't afford a car. I was paying my way through law school. So I learned the city by riding transit. And I built up lots of debt. After paying my way through law school, I've worked 30 years as an employment lawyer in downtown Calgary. My day job is fixing dysfunctional organizations. So I have a lot of experience working with top organizations, advising their board of directors on how to get organizations back on track. And I've used those skills in the public sector. I did it as chair of the Calgary Police Commission for 4 years. And then I was a managing partner of a law firm where I learned to build consensus, work with my partners as equals and peers, understand their perspectives, come up with a common strategy, and execute. So I have really good practical skills in the public and private sector. I'm a proud husband. I met my wife on the first Friday of Stampede. So if you go to Stampede, remember you could meet your spouse. And I have an 18-year-old and 16-year-old. And I dropped my 18-year-old off at university out of town just a month ago. And I know what he's worried about. He's thinking about jobs and careers. And I want to build the greatest city in the world so that he'll want to come home and live with us. Thank you.
All right, off to a great start, and we're doing really well for time. So now we're going to move into the themed section of the Q&A. As a reminder, these are themes that were chosen by Saitsa. We have 3 themes, and we're going to kick things off in the same order we started off opening statement. So Jeff Davison, on the theme of affordable housing and cost of living, how do you plan to make housing more affordable and address what has been a rapid rise in the cost of living in our city, in our province, in our country?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Look, I think we can all agree that just about everything costs us more, right? And probably when we talk about a property tax freeze, a lot of you say, well, I pay rent. I don't really have to worry about that. But here's the thing, you do. Because every time the tax base goes up on the building you're renting in, your landlord's just passing the cost along to you. So I'm proposing to actually freeze taxes so that we can actually get our budget in line and figure out how we need to reinvest in our core services. You know, there's a lot of talk about redevelopment in our city right now. I'm no fan of the blanket rezoning. I don't think that solves any of our problems. Frankly, you know, row housing starting at $700,000 does not solve affordability means. And saying that, well, they can have basement suites, that doesn't solve it either. Every house in Calgary can have a basement suite now. So what are we after? What we should be after is getting out of the way of development. We should be doing things faster. And even right now, it's taking on average 8 years to get affordable buildings put up. That's too long. We can't wait. This crisis is self-inflicted. So I want to look at how we build community within community. I did that as a former city councillor. We put in 3 districts on the west side, Springbank Hill, West District, and the project at Winsport. We'll add 55,000 residents to the west side. Those communities are about 60% completed now, and we're 4 years in. So it tells me we can build faster. We can build off-market housing into it. We can provide amenities, and we can provide good transit access to these places. To me, it's all about time, and we don't have time to continue wasting how we're going to fight to build our city forward when we need affordable housing today.
Okay, you came in on time. Well done, 90 seconds.
I wasn't sure.
Just a reminder,
I did that.
you can all see the clock all right, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah, same question to you. I mean, you're a small business owner. You already made that point. You got taxes that you're struggling with. You got property taxes layered on top of that, and you're speaking to a group of people, many of whom want to aspire to own property in the city, maybe run businesses one day.
Yeah.
How do you keep those costs down?
It's a real struggle, and I think, you know, especially from a student perspective, whether you're a domestic student or an international student, you're really working on a really tight budget. And we all know that the cost of living crisis isn't a new problem. It's really kind of just grown, exacerbated by COVID. And we see that in, you know, statistics put out, for example, by the Calgary Food Bank, and how the dependency on that service has just absolutely taken off. And students are also users of that service. And so how are we not addressing this, within the purview of the municipal government, and how do they actually tackle affordability? I really think it comes from creating a strong economy and a strong place where the private sector can really step up and fill that need in terms of the kind of housing that they're building. You know, what role does the city play in that? We need to make sure that they're building the kind of housing that people actually need, and in a variety of ways. Families, if you want a single family home, that's great. That's not for everybody, right? Apartments, people who have larger families, all of that needs to be taken into consideration. And so the climate that the city can create to allow that investment by the private sector is really something that I think we need to lean into.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy, were you just citing a 2 million population mark number in your opener? Did I hear you say that? So yeah, a lot of pressure on the city right now. And we've seen that in recent years. Waves of people coming in, supply and demand issue, affordability and cost of living. What do you think we need to do on that front?
Yeah, for me, when I think about a Calgary of 2 million people, it's exciting because we have a plan to be able to meet the challenges around housing, safety, and affordability. I would tackle this from the student perspective 3 ways. In terms of, firstly, much more responsible spending at the city. We see, for example, $1 billion found very easily to be able to buy a new arena for the Flames, but not enough money actually invested in the affordable housing initiatives that we know are needed right now. After housing, one of the top costs for an individual household or students is transportation. I'd want to continue to keep investing in active modes. I'd want us to continue to provide our support for the low-income transit pass. We got to make sure that no matter how you need to get around, whether it's transit, whether it's biking, whether it's walking, or whether it's driving, you have quality options that are affordable and that they're safe. And then I'd tackle this in terms of employment. Our youth policy just announced this morning at jeremy.ca. It calls for a number of youth initiatives. Firstly, it talks about committing to the youth summer student program, ensuring that your first job can be with the City of Calgary to be able to build those skills and expertise and be able to offer your ideas to make the city more efficient. And it also really be leaning in terms of emerging industries. Thinking about the energy as just more, energy sector is more than just oil and gas, leaning in with support for vibrancy and investment in the arts, and making sure that those 2 million Calgarians have as much opportunity through employment, housing, and safety in the city.
Thank you. Jyoti Gondek, affordability and the cost of housing. How do we deal with it in this city? It's not going away, this issue.
There's no single way to deal with it, and that's why it's important to have a plan that tackles housing from all kinds of perspectives. And the housing strategy that we created in 2023 does that. We are looking at city-owned land and understanding that when we don't need to hang on to it, we should be selling it to nonprofit housing providers. That way we can get more units built and more people living with dignity on land that we weren't using for a specific purpose. I think it's also important to provide incentives for secondary suites so that people can build those, so that students and newcomers can live with dignity and find a place that's affordable for them. I think it's really important to look at how we deliver more student housing near post-secondary institutions instead of in places that are hard to reach. And that speaks to the fact that we also need to have a strong transit network. You know, we have lived with this idea of the U-Pass for a very long time, and I don't know that it's the most effective way to get you affordability of transit. I think we need to look at student rates. I think you need to have full access to the Fair Entry program so that you are able to get discounted rates on transit, on recreation, on mobility plans. These are the types of things that we need to do to make sure that students have access to the services that we're providing. And frankly, many of you are from multi-generational families, and I want to make sure we are building more homes where you can live together as a family to reduce cost and make sure that you can care for each other as well. There's many ways to tackle housing, and we are doing them.
Sonia Sharp, same question to you. How do you tackle housing, and not just housing, but the other cost of living issues that people in the city are facing?
Yeah, I would say that affordability issues look different to everybody. Some people will say, I'm fine with paying taxes. I think the most important thing is keeping taxes low, because that's always passed on to the consumer, or if that's the business owner or the student living at a house that's being rented. Taxes need to be lower, and I have pledged to make sure that lower taxes are going to happen the next 4 years. The other thing we have to look at is the city owns a lot of land, and a lot of land by existing train stations. So I've also pledged with, and I'll talk about my Communities First team later, about building more transit-oriented development, but using a community revitalization levy where we're borrowing money from the province and we're using that money to pay for the development and pay it back. The other thing is when we have permits, we can lower the cost of permits, we can shave down time. Again, those all get cost to the end user, which is you and the home buyer. So it's really important that you tackle things from different angles. And across the city, affordability looks different for everybody. So those are kind of the things I've been talking about. But the other thing is also advocating to the provincial government. They need to start stepping up a bit more when it comes to student housing, and not just student housing, senior housing, and making sure that it's accessible to everyone that wants to live. So when you get off Brentwood Station, you have some places you can, hang out, but there needs to be more there for everybody. And all around the world, when you get off a train station, what happens? You're in your destination of where you want to be, eat, live, or play. So we need to change their landscape of what affordability looks like for different populations.
All right, thank you. Brian Thiessen, your thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, so we've proposed our housing toolkit. And in our housing toolkit, which you can read on the Calgary Party website, we are going to prioritize housing in every decision at City Hall. And we're talking about radically streamlining the building process so that we can provide the housing supply that this city needs as 100,000 people come each year. And People's eyes glaze over when you talk about cutting red tape and deregulating until they realize that that cumbersome regulation that's built up over the last decade at Calgary City Hall adds $50,000 to the cost of a single-family home, $80,000 to the cost of a townhome. That gets passed on to renters, that gets passed on to students and seniors, and that cost is directly added on to mortgages when people buy a home for the first time. So it is critically important to make housing the top priority. We've proposed a 3-3-3-1 housing policy, 3 days for a housing rental, 3 weeks for a housing and townhome approval, 3 months for a complex mid-rise, and 1 year for large projects. And the default will be they're approved. If the city can't get their act together, city admin, transportation planning aren't talking to one another, we're going to ensure that those are approved and we move on. On other affordability issues for students, I would say this. The UPass, I would expand that for summers when you get your summer jobs.
Okay, thank you.
And I would reach out in other ways.
To be continued, maybe after.
Yeah, to be continued.
I just want to do a little straw poll here. So we have a lot of students here. How many of you, show of hands, think after your studies are over, you're going to be able to stay in Calgary in order to afford a home? Or you'll have to go somewhere else?
Wow.
Yeah? Okay, that's a good sense of it. I've got some kids in post-secondary. We have the conversation all the time. It's really pertinent not only for the students in the room, but their parents too. That was great, great opener. First topic is in the can. We're moving on to another one that I know is going to resonate with a lot of you, and in general, resonate with a lot of people these days, mental health programs and resources specifically for students. Sonia Sharp, why don't you kick us off on this one? What do you think on this issue when you think of programs that are maybe in existence now that need to be expanded, or what else from a city point of view we could do to help young people who are struggling with these issues?
Well, a lot of times, other than there's issues in general going on with folks that need support, some of the issues that people deal with is financial. And financial issues can actually cause a lot of mental health issues, and you can't afford to live. And so one thing the city can do is keep cost of living down. Now, there's other things, obviously, that we need to do. We need to advocate to our province and Alberta Health to make sure students have access to whatever they need. And honestly, they should be triaged in the fact that they need it before a lot of other people. Students and children, I have 2 children, they're teenagers, they need those access to the mental health tools more than anybody. I'll say one thing. I know that there's a teacher strike going on, and I'm all about the children. And I'm telling you why I'm all about the children in this. Most of these kids going through the strike right now were affected by COVID. Their lives changed in COVID. They were stripped from being in sport, and all those things matter. And so what I'll say is a city plays a supporting role to support mental health and addiction strategy. We can't deliver it personally because none of us are doctors. None of us are practitioners, and if we were, we'd probably be in different positions. But what we have to do is advocate. And the other big thing is advocating within our means, but pressing on the provincial and federal government in providing those supports. That'd be, financial relief for the parents, financial relief for the children and the students, but really understanding what role we need to play and what populations we're actually providing the reliefs for, because they look very different for everybody.
Okay. Jyoti Gondek, do you want to yes and that? Do you want to contrast that? How would you help young people struggling with mental health issues when it comes to programs?
I think one of the biggest things we need to do as leaders is talk about it. If we are not talking about mental health struggles and we are not validating the fact that mental health is something that we all need to pay attention to, then we're just allowing stigma to continue. So I think it's really important that all of us on this stage, all of you who are student leaders, are openly talking about mental health, because once you name it, you're able to deal with it. And I think it's important to do this because we are seeing a shift in society. We are now seeing places like Chamber of Commerce openly talking about mental health. We've got business leaders who have shared their stories. And as a result of that, you're seeing change happening in the business community. I think the same thing can happen within post-secondary institutions. I also think it's really important for us to see how, as a city, we can partner with post-secondaries. We've got a mental health program right now that provides micro grants, and it's called Change Can't Wait. And it is available to any community-based groups that are helping specific audiences deal with mental health issues. If we strengthen that to be closely aligned with post-secondary institutions, we could help supplement what you've already got on campus. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about making sure that we have a fair entry program that is also focused on providing you with mental health supports. If we can provide you with low-income transit passes, low-income recreation, we should be able to move the needle on providing you with counseling and supports for mental health as well.
Jeremy Farkas, you want to add to that? You want to contrast it? Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, I would actually just reinforce that. I think it's important for us to talk about this as an issue. For me, when I was a kid, I attended more than 8 elementary schools before I finished high school. So that's a journey and a challenge I've had persistent through my life. One thing that I would contrast with what's been said is I don't think it's fair, it's not enough just to advocate. I think the city really has to lean in. There's been a lot of debate in terms of whose jurisdiction is what. Advocacy to the province, advocacy to the federal government, it's not good enough. And that's why about 5 years ago, I was one of the co-signers with Mayor Nenshi on the City of Calgary's Community Action on Mental Health and Addiction Strategy. And really the approach and the philosophy was that this was everybody's responsibility. It wasn't just the Premier, it wasn't just the Prime Minister. And the city has a responsibility to lean in, not just with advocacy, but with significant investment. And there's a lot that we can do to be able to provide that certainty for students in terms of the stability of services, investment in recreation, investment in fair entry, the low-income transit pass, to make at least the city services the least thing you have to worry about. I'd also go in a different direction as well. I've spoken with leaders in the trans community, in newcomer communities as well. That safety element, that personal individual security is so important for us to, as leaders, to be able to demonstrate that Calgary is and always will be a welcoming city. And I think that that's absolutely central to the job of our next mayor to do.
Sarah Elder, you want to be the next mayor. What would you do to address this issue?
I mean, I think it's admirable that that people on the stage have been talking about how we tackle this at a city level. This is the responsibility of the provincial government. And so I think it's in areas like this, actually, that, we can advocate, but I think it's really in that relationship with the provincial government that we need to say, this is actually your responsibility. What can we do to get to the point where, you're addressing the needs of Calgarians? And I would be saying this as the mayor to the premier. When we spend money in other areas that aren't in our jurisdiction, it means that we can't spend the money that we should be spending actually on municipal issues. And I think that's something that we really have to tackle with, and that's not always an easy conversation to have. I also completely agree with Jyoti in needing to say it. I've shared before in different ways that I've struggled with anxiety in different things. I'm also in menopause now, so that's like a whole new experience. But being comfortable to say those kinds of things, to ask for help when you need it, destigmatizing, conversations even between men and women, there's a lot that we can do that I don't actually think costs a whole lot of money, and it starts with us.
Thank you for that. Jeff Davison.
I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction because I actually work in healthcare and have established one of the most comprehensive mental health programs for cancer patients in the province. I disagree that it's just a provincial role. Yes, healthcare is a provincial role, but we all have a role to play when it comes to mental health. And there's lots of areas of mental health that we need to address, and we need to look into city infrastructure, such things as recreation, to make sure that we're giving people place, vehicle, whatever that is to deal with the challenges they're facing. And so city building really becomes some of the solution towards how we deal with mental health. I can tell you, it's a big area though. And, for a lot of the politicians, we sit here and talk about, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. I've actually taken the step to do it. And we did it by meeting with our patients, talking to them, learning from the patients that have gone through the system, and then working with them to bring their voice to how we establish a mental health program. Some of the bads of COVID were always that we were isolated and there were many challenges, but from a healthcare perspective, one of the biggest issues we learned was that we can adapt virtual care. And so one of the cool things that we do is when a patient comes in and they want to talk about their health, often what they want to have present with them is a caregiver, whether they're working with a psychologist or they're working with the peer support group. We now have the ability through technology to actually bring in a caregiver who might be somewhere else in the world, but now they're right there in the room, creating the environment where we can all be a part of the solution. And so it really does come down to access. It really does come down to one-to-one patient care, because everybody's mental health struggles are different, and we need to recognize that and plan accordingly.
Our final voice on this, Brian Thiessen.
Yeah, so I'll echo some of what was said about destigmatizing mental health issues. I took over my law firm managing partner role during COVID, and we had 2 suicides in the office, one of whom was one of my best friends, Rob Hausman, who was a partner in the real estate group at Osler. And we brought in mental health experts, and we talked to them, and they said, Brian, if you're going to lead on this issue, you have to show vulnerability and talk about what you're struggling with. And that was new to me. So I had to lead by example. I had to open up to our associates and staff about losing my good friend. And I had to tell them, listen, I'm encouraging you to get mental health supports because I'm getting mental health support. It's like going to a mechanic if your car is broken down. You wouldn't deprive your car of it. You shouldn't deprive yourself of the mental health supports you need. And we led each other, and we leaned on each other, and we got through that mental health crisis in my law firm. And we came out stronger the other side because we took care of one another. For you, I would invest in access. City-funded community hubs in libraries and community centers, so there's mental health supports there. More supports for peer training, so you can support one another. What I've learned is you're much more likely to speak to your peers about your mental health issues, and meeting students where they are, high schools, SAIT, MRU, and the University of Calgary.
Good stuff. And I think you would agree that it was really important to share as well your different perspectives on this. And I'll tell you, I've done a few of these. I've never heard this topic come up at any forum like this. So it's really healthy in terms of advancing the conversation. I'm going to lead off one of these. Thanks for that. This next topic, again, chosen by Saitsa, is really going to hit home for a lot of you. It's about employment. So the issue is employment and support for recent grads. How are you going to get these people work? Sarah Elder, we'll start with you.
That's right.
They want to work. That's why they're here. That's why
Yeah.
they're getting the skills. Let's put them to work. How are you going to do it?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that, like, my own path to, the most important part of my career, or so far, outside of being a small business owner, was actually working in politics, and thinking about how we can, take what we have. You obviously you get into something, and I had something that I wanted to say, and now I'm thinking about something else, and it's coming out in a really strange way. What I wanted to say was, going back to how I got my start in politics, I actually started working in politics without having a degree. I had started at a college, now a university in BC, started working in politics. Every one of my peers had either a bachelor's degree or even a master's in some cases, and I didn't. And it wasn't something that I went around saying I didn't have, but I actually didn't graduate from university until I was 29. And so I understand that people come to education in different ways at different times when they can do it, and that's really important. But getting a job, there's so many ways that the city can work with post-secondary institutions in the city in new and in creative ways, including in AI, which I understand is a program here. So there needs to be better partnerships between those organizations.
Okay. Jeremy Farkas, employment opportunities for young people, the folks here at SAIT, and support for those who've already graduated and are looking for work. How would you address it?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that we can do for the local investment environment is to commit to Calgary being at the center of a strong and united Team Canada. We need to do everything that we can to instill the confidence of investing here locally. I actually ran for councillor in 2017 because I was part of the City of Calgary's hackathon, a part of a team who won a competition. Ultimately, we weren't able to get our idea off the ground, despite the fact that it was possible in places like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, elsewhere. So I'm calling for a big revamp of the City of Calgary's procurement policies. I was recently sitting down at Platform Calgary with other business leaders, entrepreneurs, who talked about how damn difficult it was to do business with the City of Calgary. And when you think about the city as a $5 or $6 billion a year budget, there's so much innovation, so much technology being deployed here locally by all of you as students and our incredible small businesses that we got to be purchasing locally. We got to be leaning in to that Team Canada approach. And I'm also calling for allowing for better skills training, the cross-pollination, especially in STEM, by leaning in on the City of Calgary's summer student hiring program. This is great to be able to provide work for late high school students, current post-secondary students, as well as recent grads. And it's not just for you guys, it's actually for the city administration to help bring your ideas, to bring your energy, bring a new way of looking at some of the traditional challenges around transportation, around safety, around everything that the city does. So let's stay in Canada and let's focus on keeping those jobs in Calgary.
Jeff Davison.
I don't want to quote Trump, but I don't know what he just said. The reality is a strong economy is what's going to keep you here. What we need to be focused on is what does the next generation of Calgary look like? My first order of business is to actually figure out how we keep young minds here. I sit on the board of directors at the University of Calgary. I'm also on the Senate there. And I can tell you, primarily, each and every day, we're focused on how do we place students who are graduating in our city. But from a city perspective, it's really about how do we build the economy that is attracting the jobs to Calgary, right? I spent 4 years as a city councillor on the board of Calgary Economic Development. I started the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. I pushed technology in this city because I know we need to diversify our economy. I didn't wait for the phone to ring. I got out and banged on doors. And that's how we started attracting some very big companies to Calgary. But the work isn't done. The office towers continue to fall vacant. Our job is to really set the stage with the career path that you want to have. And that starts by having conversations with students. What are the paths we're going? What are the challenges that we're going to see? AI is going to take a lot of jobs away from us. So how are we combating that as a city? How are we competing differently on a world stage to attract big business and small business here? Because let's remember that small business in Calgary is the largest employer in our city. So setting up the right economy for entrepreneurs to succeed is absolutely critical. But we all know the future, and we do have to diversify our economy, and that means looking for new opportunities and getting out as your mayor and championing Calgary to ensure you have the work that you're looking for.
Jeremy Farkas, you have an opportunity to rebut the start of that statement from Mr. Davison, implying that you weren't as clear as you could have been in your answer. If you so choose, you got 30 seconds.
I'm all good.
All good. All right, let's move on. Jyoti Gondek, on the question of employment opportunities and support for recent grads.
I think one of the biggest things we can do as the City of Calgary is recognize that we're one of the largest employers in this city, and we need to actively go out and seek talent. I think it's really important for city departments to actually understand the kind of programs you're taking at places like SAIT, and then come in and meet with your student groups, meet with your profs, and find out what it is that we have in common. What kinds of things are we working on at the city where we can use your talent and your skills and your hard work? I get a little tired of hearing that students have to prove themselves. I think we have to prove that we are a place where you would like to be. So I think we need to be much more engaged with the programs you're taking and the things that you are learning. I also think the process is flawed. Having to send in a resume and wait for someone to call you back. What are you going to put on your resume when you're a student and you know that job says you need X years of experience? I think if there's one thing that COVID taught us, it's that you can get onto a Zoom call and you can get to know somebody and understand who they are and what they could do for you. We need to be doing more of that. I think weeding through resumes is a dated process, and we need to be much more interactive and proactive with students. I also think that diversification of the economy is something we need to keep doing. In my time as mayor, we have attracted more film and television production here. We have brought esports here. We've made sure that the tech sector is now the fastest growing one in North America. And I want to bring manufacturing back. Let's start producing locally.
Okay, Sonia Sharp told us she could drive a nail. How would you drive employment for young people?
I'm just going to say something that I think, every politician's going to sit up here and tell you that they can do everything that you want to hear, but the city actually isn't indirectly involved in creating jobs. We are one of the biggest employment agencies in Calgary, and I'm going to give you a little story about that. But what we do have is Calgary Economic Development, and they're our driving force to recruit here in Calgary, and we work with them. And there's a couple members of council that sit up here and say they were this, they were that. They sat on a board, and Calgary Economic Development was the driving force behind it. But I'm going to tell you something about the City of Calgary and their archaic hiring practices. I don't have a degree. I have a diploma. I was never smart enough to be an executive assistant. I was a practitioner, not an academic. So if you want to talk about someone that has lived experience with every door being shut in their face for 20 years, it was me, until I decided to leave, run for council, and win. So I think what happens is we have to lead by example, and that's what politicians can do. So when we talk about changing our ways, we have to start as leaders. And I have been really on the city HR department saying, we don't need a million letters by our names. We need practical people that can work hard and be public servants. The other thing, I'll do a pitch. We talk a lot about housing and building. Guess which industry is the lowest out of state right now? Trades. Get out there. It's one of the best things you can do. And I'll tell you, more trades we have, faster houses we build. The other thing we can do for jobs and businesses is cut the red tape on our side. So I'm not going to give you some answers you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear.
Tell me who you were referring to when you were talking about a couple of people
Well,
sitting up there.
I will say that there's an individual up here saying that he started Opportunity Reinvestment.
So it's Jeff Davison.
Yeah, it actually started before he was a councillor.
Let's give him an opportunity to
Sure, it
rebut
was
what you said.
before he was a member of council. He did sit on the board, but
That's actually not true. I stood up in council and actually pitched the idea. It was worked on by a bunch of business leaders in our community who had brought it to council, but it needed to be passed, it needed a budget, and it needed direction. See, that's the thing about sitting on a board. Your job is oversight and governance. Your job is to make sure the plan that we talk about actually happens by providing the leadership through the groups to deliver it. And that's exactly what we need in our next mayor. We don't need somebody who's shoveling things off to other people. We need clear and concise direction to send administration on a path to success, because their success is your success too.
All right. Brian Thiessen, you're going to wrap us up on this topic. Putting young people to work.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, and I will say, I don't think of myself as a politician. I think of myself as a citizen and a business owner, and I will tell you that there are real practical things we can do. I have got my first job as a first-year law student here with Imperial Oil, and that really struck home to me this week when uncertainty created by the Premier talking about separation drove their head office out of Calgary. That's a real loss, and there's real repercussions with politicians fighting about these types of issues and talking about separation when we should be building jobs. We can expand city internships and co-ops. As was said, the City of Calgary is a major employer in Calgary. City internships and co-op programs are a real way for you to get those things on your resume and job experience working with City Hall. Partner with local employers. I've worked with over thousands of tech startups in Calgary and helped them build their businesses here, and they are dying to work with you. And if the City of Calgary would partner with them, we could provide jobs in emerging companies such as clean tech, ag tech that are expanding the market and filling the office towers downtown, and they're ready to hire people like you. A Calgary jobs, summer jobs program should be expanded, and we should support student entrepreneurs. Space, mentorship for not-for-profits and entrepreneurs in your space that want to start businesses in this community. And student career hubs that highlight student jobs with the City of Calgary.
Okay, good stuff. That concludes our themed section of the debate. So now it's kind of a free-for-all. These are questions that were submitted in advance, and we're still open to receiving questions here tonight. You should have all seen the QR code. Did you all see the QR code? Okay, if you have anything, based on what you've heard so far in particular, the follow-up question is something the journalist always loves. I heard something, I'd like to hear more about it. Please submit that. How are we doing so far on that front, Nara? Are we getting a lot of questions from the QR codes? Not enough. Fire it up, folks. So send the questions in, but I'm going to kick things off with some of the pre-submitted questions.
I think she's indicating it might be closed.
Is it closed?
it's closed.
It's not working. QR code's not working. Are we?
It closed
It
yesterday.
closed yesterday.
Are we on that? Okay, you've sparked a meeting of the minds. We'll see if we can get on that toot sweet. If not, maybe we'll go to an open forum Q&A, because I don't want you to be denied your questions. But let's start with some of the questions, as I said, that were submitted ahead of time. We're going to start with Sonia Sharp. Now, keep in mind these questions were actually designated for specific candidates, so that's why I'm calling on you. You've opposed blanket rezoning. It's a hot topic.
Hot topic.
What would you do to increase housing supply and affordability while respecting the needs and character of existing communities?
Yeah, I'm opposed to blanket rezoning. I plan on repealing it with my colleagues on Communities First once we're elected. And going back to, respecting the community character and bringing people back to the process. Now, I proposed a motion in 2023 that failed twice about reducing red tape. You can shave off 120 days from the permit process. So a little tidbit is I actually worked in the planning department for 15 years, so I know where efficiencies can be found. Unfortunately, the administration did not want to support that, and that's fine, it failed at council, but that's something we're going to bring back. And when we talk about affordability, I talked a little bit about, lowering the cost of tax. That's really important, but also in our new communities. Some of the most affordable living in Calgary actually happen outside downtown. People can live a little bit freer in those areas with a little bit more money in their pocket. And so we see high density in some of the newer communities. We also can't vilify people where they want to live. And that's what blanket rezoning kind of did. It put a wedge in the communities. And so you want to live downtown? Great. Let's make sure we have amenities for you. If you want to live in the new communities, great. Let's make sure those amenities are there and the infrastructure is there for you. But blanket rezoning was like a real big wedge in Calgary. And I'll be honest, the reason I need to repeal this is because of what it did for communities and pitting neighbors against each other. That is not the Calgary I want, and that is not the Calgary I'm moving forward with.
Thank you. I'm told the QR code will be ready in about 5 minutes. It'll be live. In the meantime, this next question comes from a student intended for Jyoti Gondek and Jeremy Farkas, and I'll start with you, Jeremy. Some Calgarians would like to see the one safe consumption site our city has shut down. Can you please share your intentions around harm reduction, especially if the province were to shut that site down?
For sure. I support harm reduction as part of a continuum. We need to compare both compassion and enforcement in addressing safety and downtown issues. The province has been very clear that a request to close the site is in fact just a request to move it somewhere else. I think we need to get to the root causes of the issues. Just moving the challenges to another neighborhood for another set of communities to deal with, that's not solving the problem. What we know right now is that it's about 50 to 100 individuals in Calgary who are responsible for the vast majority of repeat violent crimes, offenses. We need to crack down on those violent offenders, and we need to ensure that we have sentencing and bail reform at the provincial and federal level to be able to address that. I advocate for changes like reopening the downtown police station. In my time as a Calgary Police Commissioner, I understood and really learned through the evidence that discussions around crime, safety, social disorder, they're very nuanced. But what we need is both compassion and enforcement. So that's really what my safety plan at jeremy.ca calls for, is being tough on crime, supporting the front line, supporting our first responders, investing in transit safety, investing in more policing and accountability for that policing, but also getting to the root causes, talking about prevention, mentorship, gang suppression, diverting youth from crisis in the first place. So it's really important that we be tough on crime and even tougher on the causes of crime and get to the source of this issue rather than just move it to some other community to deal with.
Jyoti, your intentions around harm reduction, and should that consumption site eventually be shut down, what would the mayor do?
I think it's important to clarify something. It is not clear from the province what they intend to do about anything. It is certainly not clear that a call from City Council to close the site means that it would be relocated. That is not a thing. That is not reality. There is no reason City Council should have to take ownership of mental health and addiction. That is not our purview. We do not have mental health and addiction experts within the local government. We rely heavily on our provincial government to provide strong healthcare measures. So the decision to open or close a medical facility does not belong to a local government. It belongs fully to the ministry that is responsible for it. And if you close that consumption site without providing any kind of alternative, you will immediately turn people out onto the streets and you'll create an even worse situation. So we need to find out what the intention is of the provincial government. I have worked with Minister Wilson and had 2 meetings with him to say, you have implemented a recovery model. You have this focus on recovery. What can you do to enhance the services at the supervised consumption site, and how can you make it decentralized so it's not all in one community? These are conversations that have come up for 4 years without any kind of a response from the provincial government. But closing that site means you will turn people into the street and create an even worse environment.
Thank you. This next question was intended for Jeff Davison and Brian Thiessen. Brian, I'll let you kick it off. What steps will you take to address safety concerns, especially on transit and in and around C-train stations?
Yeah, so with my work on police commission, I did a lot of ride-alongs, and we've promoted a public safety toolkit. So we're focused on a few things. A housing first strategy to house the unhoused, as well as 24/7 mental health and addiction supports integrated with the Calgary Police Service and Transit Police, modeled after the Alpha House teams. And in fact, just funding Alpha House to do it, they can't currently do it 24/7. So we need to have 24/7 mental health and addiction supports working with the Calgary Police and Transit Police on transit, ensuring more safety. We need to make sure that transit police are back on transit, not driving around in cars, but actually on transit, making people feel safe. They need to be housed with Calgary Police and Transit Police. And I've presented this to the executive of the Calgary Police Service. And they said, Brian, not only do we agree with your plan, it's called Reach Up. We worked on it for 4 years, and this council hasn't funded it. So they're ready to roll it out on day one. We can actually implement our plan that all the experts, mental health and addiction experts, agree on, and the policing experts agree on. We also need to do some built-in safety measures, more lighting at transit stops, more cameras in transit, so that the drivers are not suffering harm when they're trying to provide safe transit services to all of you. You should feel secure whenever you ride transit, and we can provide the measures, and we have a plan to do it.
Okay. Jeff, on the issue of safety in general in the city and specific to transit, what would you do?
You know, I think we have to all agree that what we're doing isn't working. I don't think I talk to anybody any day right now that would say 4 years ago I felt safer. It's simply a deteriorating situation. And let's be real, complex problems do not have simple solutions. The one thing I'm proposing is the idea of getting a task force together, because I don't actually agree that all the levels of government, I don't agree that our policing agencies and all of the wraparound community supports have agreed that we have the same problem. And that's first what we have to get together and do. Drop the silos. Let's get together and talk about what is the issue. And then we can start to have a conversation about how do we all work towards solutioning that issue. I think transit is a prime example of just where we're failing. When our bus drivers are being pepper sprayed, when people are being attacked, when there's open drug use and defecation happening on our C trains, this is not Calgary. We've got to do better. Now, there's lots of people that will say, you know, they want to support things like turnstiles and, you know, the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars it would take to do that, I don't think is right. I do think what we need to do is have more peace officers actually on the trains. It was a proven model during COVID. When I was on council, we funded extra security measures on trains just to keep people safe. It's things like that, having presence that matters on the trains. I agree, we need more lighting, we need more security, but it comes down to funding it. It's prioritizing your safety as well as our transit operators' safety that we really have to focus on as a council, and stop just talking about it. We actually have to fund it and make it happen.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick note, I'm told the QR code is now accessible. If you want to get a question in, please do so. This next question is for Sarah Elder. So if the Alberta government were to use the Notwithstanding clause.
So easy.
As the Premier has
Super light
indicated
topic.
She might. To pass a law that affects Calgarians' civil rights, what role should the Mayor play? And you have a couple of options laid out by this student.
Wow.
Remain neutral, push back, or build alliances with other municipalities. I would suggest anything else that pops into your head, feel free. You got 90 seconds.
I'm assuming this is around trans rights?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, wow, okay. You know, this is a really sensitive topic, and unfortunately, I believe our provincial government has chosen to target a really vulnerable population in our community. You know, my approach is, you know, that, and it's been interesting because I've gotten a lot of emails from people, real or not, I'm not sure, on this issue, asking me, for example, how many genders there are, or, you know, and I've been really surprised because, you know, I want us to get back to a place where we can just like live and let live. Just because something isn't for you doesn't mean it shouldn't be for anybody or it shouldn't be for someone else. You know, I think that the provincial government is going to do what they want. But here in the City of Calgary, honestly, it's about accepting people for who they are, the kind of city that we are, and it's not one where people are discriminated against. People are simply accepted for who they are and how they show up. So, you know, that's a really big question and something we're grappling with as a society. It really requires nuance and care and thought because it's actually just a question about people.
Okay. Jyoti Gondak, this is coming from a student, I'm quoting. You call your green policies a step toward sustainability, but from where I sit, they just look like expensive experiments that jack up our bills and kill affordability. How is that helping Calgary's future?
So some of the initiatives that we have put into place at the City of Calgary include the Clean Energy Improvement Program, where you have access to funding, where you can build greater efficiency in your home. You can replace your furnace, your windows. You can do the types of things that make your home more energy efficient, and that actually saves you money on your bills. We have also been a council that is working hard to make sure that people impacted by hail damage are able to get some sort of funding and relief for what they've been through. We are a city that is also making sure we are diversifying our transit fleet. So we have gone from diesel to compressed natural gas to electric, and we're exploring hydrogen now. All of those things are intended to reduce carbon emissions and save money. The initiatives that we've put into place are designed to make sure that we become more energy efficient and actually reduce the bills that we pay, whether it's in commercial buildings or in your homes. So the policies that we've put into place are designed to protect our environment and also give you long-range savings if you apply into those programs. So that's why we have had the climate declaration, and that's why we are pursuing a lot of initiatives like making sure that we are flood-proofing our city. That's why we're putting up berms and barriers to ensure what happened in 2013 doesn't happen again. So our policies around the environment are intended to protect Calgarians.
Thank you. So this next one has to do with political parties new to our city and our province, right? It's a pilot project the province is rolling out. We have 2 members on stage of 2 different parties. So Brian Thiessen, this question to you. If Calgarians overwhelmingly vote for independent candidates in this election, do you think the province will end this pilot project of parties at the municipal level?
I think so. I think that the province introduced political parties because their stated purpose was to remove the power of incumbents to win the election. But the unstated purpose was Danielle Smith wants to run Calgary City Council. And she wants to help her friends attain that position, that answer to her. So the Calgary Party was formed to resist that. We think Calgary City Council should only answer to Calgarians. And so we brought in 13 progressive and conservative candidates from across the political spectrum, centrists, and we've built really good policy. And I'll tell you this, I think if we win, Danielle Smith will get rid of political parties the next day. I've talked to the NDP. They've told me they'll get rid of political parties if they're elected. And I don't care, because we're not trying to build a dynasty. What we were trying to build was a team, a group of individuals that could write real meaningful policy, learn how to work together, and a real functional team. And that's what we've done. The municipal legislation doesn't allow us to caucus after the election without including all the other councillors. We have to disband for 2 years after the election. So there's really all we've done is agree to vote on 4 priority areas: public safety, transit, housing, and critical infrastructure. There's no party whip. We're just a team of individuals that reinforce one another and hold each other up and write meaningful policy for all of you.
Okay. Not really a fan of the idea. And Sonia, am I correct in that you weren't really a fan of the idea? Can I ask why you formed a party then?
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I wasn't a fan. I don't believe municipal parties belong in in civic politics, and the reason was because I didn't understand what they were trying to do, and I spoke out hard against it. But what I started to realize is all the province was doing is legitimizing what was already there. There was already a party voted in 2021. Calgary's future. And so there were already 8 people, and they might not think they're a party, but they are. They're just a party by association. So as I started to read the rules, and 4 incumbents, myself, Councillor Wong, Councillor Chabot, and Councillor McLean, we started to talk a little bit about the benefits of it. And we've created a team, there's 10 of us, and we're all very different from each other. And we don't have a party whip either, and we agree on the same principles. But we're also, and the candidates that are running, are there to vote in the favor of their community. And Brian is right about legislation, about what happens the day after. We get sworn in as individuals. And so I look at it as a team. There's a captain, and each person on the team has a role to play. You also, as a mayor, have to bring 14 people together. So yes, I've got 10 on the team, but I still need to make friends with the other ones. So the most important thing is we all care about what Calgarians need and want and what we can deliver on. And the best part about this journey, building this team with Communities First, is the relationship we have built. In 6 months, we have built such a strong relationship that I don't think I had with anybody in the 4 years I sat on council.
Okay, I'm going to stay with you for this next one. We're now getting
sure.
the questions from the QR code. Thank you for submitting them. Speaking of being part of a team, this question is aimed at Team Canada and whether or not you believe that Alberta should remain on it. What are your views on Alberta separating from the rest of Canada?
That's for me?
It's aimed at you.
No, Team Canada. Like, where are we going? You belong. We are here. We're Calgarians, we're Albertans, and we belong in Canada. And I would love to have the conversation with the people that want to separate. My family moved here from Italy for a reason. They moved here for freedom, opportunity, came to Winnipeg, so I'm kind of happy no offense, Jody. They went from Winnipeg to Edmonton to Calgary, so I'm happy we landed in Calgary. But I would say, no, I'm a Calgarian, I'm Albertan, and I'm a Canadian. And, I might have friends in certain, political worlds. Doesn't mean we agree on things all the time. But I'm a Calgarian, true, and I'm a Canadian, and I will challenge anybody that wants to leave this country.
Do you want an opportunity for rebuttal, having spent time in Winnipeg?
I didn't mean to say that. She knows what I mean. I'm sorry. It's a Calgary-Winnipeg thing.
As I think Jeremy said, once you arrive here, you're a Calgarian.
Yeah,
that's
right.
the rule. I'm not from here. And very few Calgarians are. I married one of those. They're a rare exception. This one for you, Jeff Davison. How could you help newcomers integrate and uphold what this person considers to be Canadian values?
Well, I think it's providing opportunity. I mean, again, why does everybody come to Calgary, right? It's opportunity. It doesn't matter if you come here from Saskatchewan or the Middle East or wherever in the world. We all come here for the opportunity that is Calgary and the opportunity to grow and succeed. And I think that's really what we need to do as a city. It's setting the table for your success. I can't stress this enough in this election. Our job is very simple. Create a safe, affordable place of opportunity for everyone. Everyone is welcome here. This is the place where entrepreneurs thrive, where you have a chance. I was talking with some people a little while ago. This is the city where if you have questions and you want to meet with somebody, you could pick up the phone and you could call a CEO downtown. You could call somebody high up in the medical profession and you could say, hey, I'm looking for a career in this. Would you have a coffee with me? And almost 99% of the time, they'll say yes. Where does that exist anywhere else in the world? It doesn't, because we actually see the value of propping people up here. So I understand why newcomers come here, why they see the opportunity. Our job is to create that affordability, that access to care, that access to education that helps make them successful too. Because the greatest thing about Calgary is the strength that the diversity of Calgary has created for all of us.
Thank you. Okay, so this next question is kind of to all of you, but you don't get to speak on it, not necessarily. This person wants a show of hands. This is like a part A, part B, on which candidates support blanket rezoning.
Support it?
Support. 1. For those who don't, is part B, what are your plans to address it if elected? So we heard from you, Sonia, on this already. Sarah, why don't you start off?
So how I'm explaining my position on this is that it shouldn't be a blanket, it should be a patchwork quilt. So density where it makes sense, like the Westbrook C train station. For the life of me, I can't understand how we haven't already developed sites like that, because they are just calling out for projects to be built on them. So, we do need more housing. it needs to be done with the community buying in. The situation, I was talking with a man a week or so ago, and he was talking about, neighbors coming together and being opposed to, a project in their community and it was something around, 60 centimeters of difference in height allowance or something. So the consequences of this is just really unfortunate. And it also that Calgarians have lost the confidence in City Council, in Mayor and Council, for going against what a lot of people feel was their wishes in this decision. So
I am going to give you a chance to rebut that. The idea that Calgarians have lost confidence in their current sitting mayor because of this issue specifically, and you being the only one who raised your hand in support of this. 30 seconds if you choose.
The reason I support the rezoning change is because we need to build more housing and we need to create opportunity in neighborhoods that people love. One of the things that was said a number of times by people is that they don't want you in their neighborhood. You are DEI, you didn't earn it. That is a terrible thing to think, that people don't deserve to be in neighborhoods, that only some people deserve to live in a community. I don't want to live in a city like that. I want to live in a city where if you choose that a neighborhood works for you, you should be able to afford to live there.
Brian Thiessen, why don't you support blanket rezoning?
Well, mine's a little more nuanced because it's a complex issue. I support fixing zoning. And so what I mean by that is blanket rezoning was introduced to streamline the process, but people were ignored. And I think that we don't need to pour gasoline on the fire, and it does not need to divide us. I think we can do the hard work of fixing zoning, and we're going to ask that the issue be referred to the Housing Committee and that they consider input from Calgarians, and they consider ideas such as capping open zoning for fourplexes and a pre-process where developers have to consult with neighborhoods before they build.
That was a buck.
Sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
That was a minute and a half?
Yeah, that flew by.
Okay.
Great. That means we're having fun.
I feel like Will Ferrell. I might have blacked out there.
Please don't.
Yeah. Why don't you support blanket rezoning?
Because I think the greatest thing about Calgary is the diversity of our communities. I don't want every community to look the same. I value going to certain areas of the city for a different experience than others. And I frankly don't believe we should all be fighting one another over parking concerns. I think we can set clear and concise rules that respect community with decisions led by communities. And again, transit-oriented development. It's a big opportunity that we're just not capitalizing on. That again is where we can build density, where density makes sense. It's where we can build in affordable units. It's where we have access to transit and amenities. All of those things are what we need to be doing.
I think we have a problem with the clock, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not working?
That sound is giving me PTSD, like I have to get up.
Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna
30
hear-
seconds.
Okay, it's
I'm
not
gonna
30
hear that
seconds. This should be 90 seconds, just so we're clear. Anything you want to add there?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeremy, you're the last on this topic.
Yeah, I think we have to acknowledge we are in a housing crisis. We're in a household affordability crisis. Calgarians can no longer, with the average income, afford the average rent. So the question is, how do we build the housing that is actually at a price point that's attainable and affordable for folks? I don't think it's appropriate to suggest that people who have a worry about an eightplex going next door are somehow not being welcoming neighbors. I think it's the opposite, in fact. I live in Glamorgan near MRU, and the typical blanket rezoning approach has led to a more attainable $600,000 bungalow being torn down, replaced with 4 $700,000 luxury condos. So then that's where my housing plan goes. It focuses on actually building the housing that's affordable at the locations that can support it. It's not looking just at the homeowners as well. My plan is the only one who actually speaks to the experience of renters. It calls for specific support for renters, including a renter support office and other measures. You can see that on our housing plan. It also calls for leaning in. We know transit-oriented development. We know there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, other areas where we can be working with nonprofit providers. We can be working on assisted living, seniors housing, but it's much more nuanced than that. It's not about Calgarians not being welcomed. Calgarians did not feel heard through the process, and it's that lack of listening at City Hall that actually led to a system that didn't actually deliver the housing that's attainable and affordable for Calgarians, and that's what my plan delivers.
I'm going to stay with you for this next one. It comes from someone in the room who is asking, Jeremy, do you think the massive amount of immigration into Calgary has been beneficial or detrimental to Calgary? And what can you do to help in terms of resourcing?
Sure. So in the last 4 years, we had 300,000 brand new Calgarians come to the city. And I think that's an exciting number. Just like my dad, they came as a refugee, an immigrant from somewhere else. Right now in Canada, right now in Calgary, 1/3 of Calgarians were not even born in North America, which to me is an amazing number when you pair it with the fact that we have one of the youngest workforces, one of the highest education attainments. What this means is that it's the world's best people. All of you who are coming to Calgary to solve the world's toughest problems. I think it's exciting, but I do acknowledge that there's concern, there's fear, there is worry about the scarcity mindset. And that's where leadership comes in. That's why I'm running for mayor, is so that in the next 4 years, when we become that city of 2 million people, we actually have the plan. We have the plan around housing. We have the plan around affordability, that we lean into this vision of Calgary, continue to be a welcoming place. So I get that there's concerns around that, but this is only a challenge, it's only a crisis if we aren't prepared. But if we are prepared, if we lean in, if we actually fund infrastructure properly, if we are responsible with the money that we're spending, if we enable the future leaders to see a voice or see their voices reflected at the table, this is the best possible moment to be in Calgary. I'm so excited by that number because it is the world's best people who are coming to Calgary to be Calgarians. I could not be more excited.
Thank you for that. This next question is for Jyoti Gondak, and some of you have raised this. There's only so much the city can do, right? The province has the levers of power, and beyond that, the feds. So relationship building is really important to the person who's asking this question. How can you foster a good relationship with the provincial government?
So I've spent the past 4 years working with the provincial government on many files, and some have gone smoothly and some have been a bit challenging. The water emergency, I can tell you, I was able to call the Premier that evening and give her a heads up that we were facing a pretty serious situation. I called her again at about 5:30 in the morning the next day and said, we're going to need your help to issue an emergency alert, letting people know that we need to conserve water. And she was on it immediately. She designated Minister McIver at the time to be our primary contact. We worked with Minister Schultz to make sure we could do water testing. Provincial government stepped up and we worked well together. Then there's the Green Line, where we did not work so well together. So I went back to the provincial government after they pulled their funding on September 7th last year and said, I don't think you realize what you've just done. This South Line that you want to build cannot be done if you pull your funding right now. And it took a couple of weeks to get them to listen. It took 2 months to get them back to the table, but I did it. I worked with other members of council as well to make sure that we were talking with MLAs and explaining the importance of the project. So I have built strong relationships with the Premier, with ministers. I was able to call Minister Nixon when they canceled the funding for the low-income transit pass. He reversed that decision immediately. I've spent time building relationships, and I'll tell you this, sometimes I have to stand up for all of you and disagree with what they're doing and fight for what's right for us, as well as being a collaborator when we can be.
Along those lines, Sonia Sharp, this person points out, you've mentioned the provincial government multiple times during this debate. How would you define, you're running for mayor, how would you define that role?
How would I define which role?
The role of mayor.
The role of the mayor. The role of the mayor is to lead 14 other members of council in what Calgarians need and what they, your number one job as a mayor is Calgarians first. And then you're advocating and working, supporting the province when we need things for Calgary. So you're fighting together to get infrastructure dollars from the government of Canada. But the role of the mayor is to lead a city, and the role of the mayor should be boring because your job is really about delivering services like infrastructure, snow plowing, clean water, which is actually the number one thing that you can deliver is clean water. And we didn't have some clean water last year, and it, not to discredit this mayor, it was an issue, obviously, we all had. But things like infrastructure, safety, clean water, and the other thing that you do have to do is know that you have to listen and not lecture. You're here to listen to Calgarians. You have a shelf life. And if you're not doing your job, your shelf life actually expires. So the role of the mayor is a title. I've always said, doesn't matter what you want to call me, I'm a public servant. I spent 24 years in public service. I have 16 years business experience. And I've seen it from all angles. The other thing is, as a mayor and members of council, is to really get senior administration back on board. They report to you, council, and you report to us. So that's really important. And it's a leadership role that's not very luxurious and sometimes thankless, and the right people continue to want to do it.
Thank you. Someone in here is following politics very closely. So for those of you who are not aware, Sarah Elder here used to be co-chair for Jeremy Farkas's campaign for mayor, and this person wants to know, Sarah, why you stepped down.
Well, you know what? I actually don't want to answer this question.
Hard pass?
Yeah, it's a hard pass. I brought it up in the debate that we had earlier this week. I think it was maybe harder on me actually than it was on you, Jeremy, and I'm not interested in going there again.
Jeremy, do you want to address it?
All I can say is I respect and like you, Sarah. I really appreciate the work, the effort that you put in our team, and I respect that we can sit on a stage like this and have different ideas and different direction of the city, and still very much consider you a friend and thank you for your past support.
Yeah, I think, it's important for us to be able to, I mean, I have respect for every single one of you on the stage. Jyoti, I've considered you a friend for a long time. Sonia, I really admire you. You're very committed to the city. Brian, I love law for you. Jeff, you have a lot of great ideas. I really, there's a lot of stuff that I really support that you're putting forward, things that I am like nodding my head with. So, at the end of the day, we are actually all just people. And I think we need to remember that in this context. And so, how things get brought up at times, but we all want the best for the city.
Well said. Okay, let's move on and get her back on track. That got real for a second there, huh? Jeff Davison, this question is for you, and it requires a bit of a fact check, because this person writes, as you promised to waive property tax, did I miss something? Have you promised to waive property taxes?
Freeze.
Right, because a waive would be one thing.
Yeah, that would put us into a different predicament, yes.
How could you make sure that the city still has sufficient funding? We've been talking a lot about how it's growing. There's more and more pressure on it.
Right? I mean, there's a lot of talk about should we reduce taxes, and I don't think that's possible for a growing city. But what I do think we can do is offset our property tax-based growth, right? If we're talking about accelerating housing and ensuring that we address the housing crisis and we address the affordability crisis, getting more units built in the places that make sense, in those communities within communities, in transit-oriented development, with an industrial land strategy, the tax base we create will actually offset the tax slide that you're happening here, right? Like, here's the interesting thing. You can't cry affordability crisis and then turn around and charge people more money. So what we're trying to do is just hold the line. Let's get refocused on our budget. Let's work on the things over the next 4 years on a strategic plan that Calgarians actually value and want to see. That's going to be the priority. And the benefit is you get to tell us what the priority is. That's what we really have to do to address. And we'll address our reserves differently and how we can create better investment income. We'll address our risk management. There are lots of things we can do. I promise you this is a real thing, and I promise you we can still develop managed growth and meet affordability measures as a city.
Okay, Brian, this one's for you. Accessibility is an essential service, but shortages, like the lack of interpreters for deaf and hard of hearing Calgarians, leave many residents excluded. As mayor, what concrete steps will you take to make city services fully accessible for everyone?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that. Part of my day job is human rights lawyer, and so I spend a lot of time with the Alberta Human Rights Commission and ensuring these type of accessibility needs. And the person who inspired me to get involved in politics was my best friend from law school, who was a quadriplegic, and I spent a lot of time trying to get him over C-train tracks and city sidewalks that were blocked. And I remember him going to a job interview for a law job and being told that it was on the second floor and there was no elevator, and humiliatingly, he had to leave the building. So this is a core concern for me, and I think we can do a number of things. It starts with funding accessibility and treating it as the priority it should be for all types of disabilities. We've done far too little on handicaps. and funding handicaps and ensuring they are available for people who suffer from disabilities. I can tell you I stayed for hours at times with my best friend trying to get him on a ride home from work and from functions. So we have to provide the funding, we have to make it a priority in every decision we make, and we have to realize that these are huge assets. We need to provide tools for them to get involved, people to get involved in the working community, as well as to make all of our city services accessible, and I will make it a priority as mayor.
Okay, we're going to stay with you for this next one. Former police commissioner, you've talked about reopening police stations. As the former head of the police commission, can you explain why stations were closed in the first place and what data you will use to decide where stations should be located, new ones?
Yeah, so the Calgary Police make operational decisions on where police headquarters are located, and it goes through the civilian Calgary Police Commission. And so they decided to close their Beltline location in 2017, and a number of us asked them some pretty hard questions at the time about why they were doing that and what they thought the effect was. And I can tell you I've met with the interim chief of police to talk about reopening a downtown location. And the Calgary Police Service is open to that, to deploying resources and building a presence back up in downtown Calgary. It is actually the services and the commission's decision to decide where to deploy, but they do understand that their absence has made a significant difference in the Beltline. So I would support a new District 1 office being reopened in the downtown area. And I believe that the data that would be presented to the service would support that. I also support their Reach Up program. That's the program I referred to earlier of a 150-bed facility located in the downtown or Beltline area with Calgary Police housed with mental health and addiction experts. I think if you did those two things, we would have a significant increase in public safety and decrease in crime in the downtown area. And I think it's a much needed investment, and I would support that. If the service brought that operational plan to the commission, I would vote for it on council.
Some excellent questions coming in here. I'm afraid we're probably not going to get to all of them. I just want to let you know now, but really impressed by the
Let's
quality.
stay longer.
Friday night, students want to stay longer and hang out with a bunch of politicians.
We can stay or we can all go for a beer.
Talk about a hard
Over
time.
beers. We could do it over beers.
Yeah.
Jyoti Gondek, this next question is for you. Can you tell us all here today why you announced a climate emergency when you were first elected and then voted for a whole bunch of new communities on the edge of city limits, enhancing sprawl and going the opposite direction of density?
I can tell you that it was important for our city to be represented in a meaningful way on the global stage when we are trying to attract international investment. Every other city had done a climate declaration, and we were getting questions from investors about our true commitment to sustainability. And by being able to point to that declaration, we've been able to attract businesses here. There are renewables businesses that have come here, clean tech companies that have come here because they understand that we're committed to this. We got funding from the federal government to diversify our transit fleet as a result of that declaration, and we are taken seriously on a global stage. The World Energy Cities Partnership held their AGM here in Calgary because they understand our commitment to greater sustainability. Those types of things draw positive attention to our city and bring investment here. When it comes to building a city for everyone and when it comes to accommodating housing, there are many communities that can be building housing right now. And we approved the building of that housing to ensure that people had a place to live with dignity. We had already invested in infrastructure in a lot of those areas, and to get housing off the ground was really important. If we hadn't enabled that type of housing to be built, we would be in a much worse situation right now. So I think it's important to balance where we are growing and to understand that in a lot of our newer communities, we are achieving much greater density and providing employment opportunities that allow people to live and work in that community.
Okay, proud SAIT grad, Sonia Sharp, this is for you. I haven't fact-checked it, so just keep that in mind. In regards to employment opportunities, this person writes, you touched on the demands for graduates from trades and apprenticeship programs, considering that SAIT is a polytechnic and that is the primary provider for education in Calgary, and that trades and apprenticeship positions make up 1 in 4 job vacancies according to the government of Alberta, with industries employing these positions contributing to 47% of Alberta's GDP. Someone's really done their research. I hope that's all
Who
correct.
is using ChatGPT?
Yeah. What would your plan be to motivate more youth to pursue this career and fill these much needed positions, which I think is really the nub setting aside the stats? A lot of kids these days are still told to go into the traditional post-secondary track of university, and yet jobs are also in the trades. How would you get these people fired up for that prospect?
I wish I had more than 90 seconds. I actually met with the Calgary Construction Association yesterday, and we talked about that. We talked about getting right into the junior highs and just already getting kids excited about the trade. What I actually would like to see is more of the trade program being coupled with a business degree, because most of the time you go get an apprenticeship or a trade and you want to run a business and you need that street credit. You need to understand how to run a business. And you know, I kind of had the best of both worlds because my dad was a business person that did trade, so I kind of learned. But you really got to get them young. You know, my son who's in junior high cannot stop talking about the skateboard he's building. And this kid hates school. I have to be honest. He's probably like, thanks, Mom. But nothing gets him more excited by knowing he gets to go to CTF and build this skateboard. And you know, he says, I want to run my own business, and I watched No do this, and I can do this, and I want to build houses. But the excitement and passion behind trade is understanding you're about to create something for someone else. And if you have a passion for that, and I actually do, in case can you tell? I think it's so important. And another thing is, I have to say it, but people look down on blue-collar jobs. You know, that's how I grew up. I only knew that. So, I mean, my parents just said, go be a teacher because maybe you'll get a job. I was like, okay, but I came back and built houses. And I was a woman that was 20 and led a male-dominated industry. So if you can take anything from me tonight, know that it's possible. And just do it.
Thank you. Jeremy Farkas, if you are elected mayor, what are your plans or goals in terms of working together with the Alberta government?
I think we have to be willing to partner and be willing to push back when necessary. And one of the reasons I've chosen to run as an independent is to be able to build a council that's practical, that's pragmatic. As mayor, you have to be willing to work with a Liberal Prime Minister. You have to be willing to work with a Conservative Premier to be able to get things done. And I look back at my experience at Glenbow Ranch. So I was recently serving as CEO at a provincial park. The Premier had announced that the park was likely to be destroyed and flooded for a major flood mitigation project to be able to protect the city. Obviously, we wanted to be able to advocate to protect it. But what we did is we built an advocacy campaign, and what we did was we brought together conservatives and progressives, grassroots and business owners, environmentalists and ranchers to be able to help build an off-ramp for the province. So of course, we stood up for ourselves, but we wanted to be able to present a win that the other side would accept. So ultimately, we advanced an alternative that ended up protecting the park and protecting the city. So you have to be willing to push back and partner when necessary. And also as the next mayor, I want to be able to offer what I didn't 10 years ago as a rookie councillor, that coaching, that mentorship, to be able to bring together those city councillors across party lines. Right now, it's unlikely that any municipal political party is going to earn an outright majority on this new council. So that's why we have to be pragmatic. We have to take the best ideas from across the political spectrum and just be practical to be able to get things done.
Jyoti Gondek, how can the City of Calgary improve construction projects staying on track and getting completed quicker and properly to prevent follow-up and additional work?
I think it's really important to make sure that you understand what the schedule looks like with all your partners that are at the table. It's important to make sure that all of the utility work that is involved is coordinated. So the thing that I would like to see is a roundtable where all of the utilities and service providers come together and agree that the schedule we come up with is the one that you're going to stick to. So if you're going to dig up a street, do it in a phased manner that everyone can get in there and get their utilities and their work done, and then do one course of paving afterwards. You also need to make sure that you've got one point of contact, call it a business liaison, who stands up an office within that community where you're doing construction and is responsible for the budget, for the timelines, and being the point of contact with the businesses and the residents who have questions. You also need to check in with the public on a regular basis. You need to provide a report card that says, this is what the budget was for this program, and here's where we are. You need to tell people as well, here's the delays you can expect because this road will be shut down. However, we have an alternative route. We need to make sure that we're not closing down parallel streets where people can't get through a community at all when construction is happening. There's a lot of things that we've learned from the things that we didn't get right. We need to be much more coordinated. We need to stay on top of what's happening. We need to report back to all of you, and we need to work with businesses and residents up front to build the right plan.
Okay, we are at the end of the Q&A session, and there is one outstanding question here that I think it's kind of worthy to ask all of you of. So this was specifically for Jeff Davison. What is the biggest issue being faced by Calgary today, and what's your plan to fix it? We don't have time for the what's your plan to fix it, but I think it says a lot about what you would identify, each of you, as the biggest issue that the city faces today. So try to keep it quick and tell me what you think it is, and we'll go across, and then we'll get to closing statements.
But not what we do to fix it?
No, we don't have time for that.
Okay.
There are rules, that was clear. Why are you questioning?
Just making sure you don't want solutions.
No, the solutions are on your website, right?
That's right. I think the biggest issue is one word: trust. I think we don't have trust in government right now, and we've got to work very hard to rebuild that.
Sarah,
Communication.
can you elaborate a little bit?
I think there are a lot of ways that, City Hall, for example, should come to the people rather than the people coming to City Hall. So, coming to places like State, for example, or the UC, or recreation facilities, or just putting ourselves in different places where, because people are leading busy lives.
Okay. Jeremy?
I would say a lack of listening. Like, obviously, we've talked a lot about the big picture issues of growth, but the way that we actually meet that moment and meet that challenge is by bringing in the wisdom of the community. It's your skills, your talents, your expertise on solving issues like zoning, on affordability, on safety. All of those answers exist now out there in this room, in the nonprofit sector, in private business, and amongst Calgarians. So it's that lack of using the input of Calgarians.
Jyoti?
I think it's affordability across the board, and that means different things to different people. For some folks, it's housing. For others, it's food insecurity. And for many, it's just making sure they've got a job, but affordability is top of mind for so many Calgarians.
Sonia?
Everything's kind of been said. I agree with all of them, but I'm going to say that a leader you can resonate with that can actually deliver what you need.
Ryan?
I'd say housing is our number one priority for a reason, because we have to provide affordable housing for everyone across the economic spectrum. And I do agree that all of the fixes that are talked about that City Hall needs to do to fix themselves, I agree with each of them. But as to an issue that faces all of us, I think it's housing. It's got to be our number one priority.
We'll leave that there. That was excellent. And we're going to pivot to the closing statements. You each have a minute to do this. We're going to start in reverse from the opener, which means Brian Thiessen. You have a minute to tell us whatever you want to say.
Listen, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I want to tell you that I have built a well-functioning, fantastic team of candidates, 13 individuals that might not have been able to run otherwise, but we've supported one another, and we've got people who have a master's in urban planning, PhD in sociology, and all of them live in their communities and are deeply involved in their communities. And we have built over 100 pages of really thoughtful policy on how to improve this city and get to the solutions you need. We have public safety toolkits and housing toolkits and everything in between. And I will tell you, I see this role as a public service role. I look forward to the opportunity, if given it by each of you, to serve Calgarians and to provide the kind of leadership that I've done for the last 30 years in not-for-profits and corporations and law firms. I'd like to bring that kind of leadership and experience to City Hall and serve all of you.
Okay, Sonia Sharp.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, my legs are getting frozen. So I'm Sonia Sharp. You've heard from me tonight. I don't have a personal agenda. I have a to-do list, and it's on my website. And on that to-do list, I talked about the rezoning and downtown safety, and safety in the city in general, which was actually just endorsed by the Calgary Police Association. I am a leader that will deliver. We also talk a lot about affordability and infrastructure, but one thing you don't hear about is bringing administration to heel. Unless you get a senior administration exactly where it needs to be, none of what's happening on the stage is ever going to happen. So good governance is part of my platform. I'm also working with a team of 9 other candidates on Communities First, and they also agree on all of this with me. The other thing I'll say is, yeah, I have 16 years business experience. I worked for 20 years inside, and 4 years now as a politician. I've seen the city from very different angles, and so I know what it's going to take, and it's going to take hard work, and I work hard. So what I'll ask of you tonight is please support me. I'm going to build an affordable, safe city that works and where you can trust City Hall again. And if I may, I just have to give a shout out to the Women in Trades and Technology, which I forgot. I built that with you, and I'm so happy.
You may.
Thank you.
All
Sorry about
right.
that.
Jyoti Gondek, you're up next.
Thank you very much to the State Students Association. The questions that you posed are thoughtful. Thank you to all of you who attended. It is clear that you believe in this city and you want it to be one where you can continue to succeed and prosper. And that's what I offer you. The last 4 years, we've been through some unexpected things, but we've survived them together. We had a water feeder main break, we had tariffs thrown at us, and we had recovery from a pandemic, but we came through it stronger together, and it shows. We've got 250 people a day who moved to our city last year to call this place home, because they knew we are attracting investment, we are attracting jobs, and we're growing our economy. And that's something that we did together. And it was with my steady leadership and decisive leadership that we were able to accomplish that. With 4 more years, I can offer you more progress in keeping our city the best in Canada, if not the world. So on October 20th, I look for your support to continue this path that we've started together. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Farkas.
Well, I just want to say again, what a thrill it is to be on the stage with all these incredible candidates. And it's with great humility and humbleness that standing on a stage like this after having not been successful in 2021. All of you have reached out in incredible ways to be able to support me in the various initiatives, the various opportunities to learn and grow. I don't talk to you as somebody who is perfect, but somebody who's willing to admit mistakes and to be able to do better and be better on a go-forward basis. And that's really what our election's about, right? It's about vision. It's how do we come together as Calgarians? How do we think about how we continue to be a welcoming city? How do we be safe, affordable? And my job as your mayor is to ensure that every single one of you in 4 years are still here in the city. Not because you need to be, but because you chose to be. So let's get this done. Let's carry this forward. Vote on Monday. Vote whenever you can, and make sure that you're making yourself and your voices heard through the entire process.
Thank you. Sarah Elder.
Thanks for coming and listening to us tonight. I think hopefully what we have in common is that we all really care about the city, and you have the very exciting opportunity to exercise your franchise and have a say in what the future of our city looks like. There were a lot of things that I wanted to talk about tonight. I will have to say, actually, receiving questions from the audience is by far the best way to engage in this kind of forum, in my opinion. For example, I'd love to have a conversation around an idea of lowering the voting age to 16 in our city. Placemaking, investing in playgrounds, the kind of things that I think are too often overlooked in terms of what makes our communities special. Whether it's recruiting a tech firm to come here, that's the level of quality of life that they're looking at. And so we can do that more. We can do that more. We can do that better and together.
Jeff Davison, you have the last word.
All right, well, thank you, Saitsa, for hosting, and Rob, thank you very much for moderating. I know it's always much more fun to ask the questions than to have to answer them, but thank you all for being here. I know there's lots of things you could be doing on a Friday night. I just want to start with what I started at the beginning. You've heard from all of us on this stage. It really comes down to who do you trust, and who do you believe is the best person to get out and lead Calgary forward, potentially for the next decade. I believe Calgary is the greatest city on earth, and I think you'll all agree that's why we're here. My job is very simple. Create a safe, affordable place of opportunity for everyone, and make sure that you have a future here. But here's the thing about elections. Change doesn't happen if you don't get out and vote. Young voices don't come to the table if you don't get out and vote. Democracy doesn't work if you don't get out and vote. So you've heard from all of us here tonight. I encourage you to look at websites. I encourage you to dive into who the real people are behind what we've said and get out on a vote October 20th. I'm Jeff Davison. I'm hoping to be your next mayor, but if you do anything, get engaged and vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So I would go ahead, applaud. I hope you're applauding for yourselves too, because I'm really gonna
See, I went last. I thought that was for me.
Yeah, all for you. I would echo what Sarah said. So having done some of these, I love the format. Saitsa did a great job organizing. Well done. Big round of applause. The live questions are really smart because they can be reactive, right? And you can make people elaborate on stuff, which is really worthy, but they all have web presences. They're all still here, and I'm sure they'd take your questions if you want to have further conversations with them. And however you sit on the political spectrum, I like to think you all agree we have some quality people up here who are putting themselves out there in a climate that is not terribly friendly for aspiring politicians these days. So credit to them once more. Big round of applause, and then we'll ask Aaron. With that, I'm going to turn things over to our MC, Aaron Ramos. Aaron.
Thank you, Rob. Can we give a round of applause for Rob for some wonderful moderation here tonight? Awesome. Perfect. So thank you again, Rob. Thank you to our wonderful candidates here tonight for sharing your passion and your vision for Calgary's future. I just wanted to make a special note that tonight we received over 80 questions. Unfortunately, we weren't able to answer them all, but we thank you for taking the time to join this very important conversation. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to our Saitsa Vice President, Hannah Tolentino.
Thank you, Aaron. Tonight's debate was both insightful and inspiring. On behalf of Saitsa and the Board of Directors, I want to thank our mayoral candidates for thoughtfully answering all questions. I also want to thank the students and community members here for their energy, engagement, and great questions. I hope you enjoyed your time with all of us. A special thank you goes to the Saitsa management, staff, and Gateway Events for their hard work planning and making this event possible. We extend our appreciation to the state executive team, Board of Governor members, and staff for your support. Thank you for helping making this debate a lively and impactful discussion.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. So on behalf of Saitsa, I'd like to thank our candidates, our moderators, student community, and everyone here today and everyone watching online for being a part of this important conversation. So before we wrap up, quick reminders. I'm gonna make sure that I'm reading this right because it's very, very important information to know when to vote, right? Yes, always. So Calgary's municipal election is coming up on Monday, October 20th. SAIT will have advanced polling stations available in this very room on Monday next week and Tuesday, October 6 and 7, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. This is your chance to make your voice heard and help shape the future of our city. We encourage everyone else here and everyone watching online to get out and vote. This concludes the 2025 Saitsa mayoral debate. Thank you and have a great evening.
Yeah.